He basically, the second session also almost acted as a sort of comparison about these different councils, and it seemed actually they came to the conclusion that it was more the press officers' fault than the actual councils who wanted to appear to engage with the public.
There was one blog called the Venter blog who had a great relationship with their council at the start. They were allowed into council meetings, they could sit and take minutes during meetings and all this. And then they did one critical blog about a decision the council had made, or did a slightly critical piece, and that was it. They were banned from the council, they couldn't go to meetings, couldn't do this. Now, the argument was that they couldn't do that properly to a newspaper, but with a blog they just kind of went, oh, you don't work for us, you're not working for us anymore. But it took them a while to get that trust back, but a lot of the blogs were saying that they just haven't got, I say Pits and Pots have had a really tough time with the council.
A good example that was held up was the Lichfield blog, and that was sort of seen as a success story. They've got a good relationship with press officers, and they also broke local stories nationally. For example, the Anglo-Saxon hoard that's in the museum at the moment. They were the first people to break the story, because they were the first people to break the story. It's still like top rated in Google and stuff like this. So that was session 2. Session 3, we went a separate way.
We split up and did different ones. You tell us about yours, because yours sounded great.
Yeah, well, mine was weird because we moved from the lecture theatre into a classroom. It was called an activity space, but it was a classroom. And so we all sat around in a little sort of circle, and it was a bit like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting or some kind of seminar. So it was less lecturing and more kind of group discussion. This one was about moderating comments on blogs, and with this one in particular, it seems to be the very local blogs, sort of, mostly sort of non-professional blogs that were talking about having troubles with moderating their own people commenting on the site. There was a local blog called WV11 that are based in Wednesbury, and all they wanted to do was big up their area, and all they'd been met with is just people going, "Oh, it's crap, everything's crap." So they just wanted to have some sort of way of tackling that. Someone at castlebromwich.net suggested that they sort of actually have more physical public engagement with their neighbours and the kids, but it seems to be also attacking them. And then there was a youth engagement website was mentioned called Typecast, and that was quite a good way of sort of dealing with local objection. And then there was, towards the end of the session, there was sort of a talk about maybe sort of developing a code of practice or some kind of regulation for the blogs, and this was met with there was some reason not to do this. Mostly, it seems to me that still blogs. A lot of bloggers sort of consider themselves outside the system, and they don't want to particularly be sort of confined by the man. So
that came up quite a lot, didn't it? Especially in the fourth and final session, when a lot of the big blogs were saying, "Do we need some kind of regulation? Because then we'll get more respect from councils and press officers who currently don't deal with this because they say we're unregulated." So there's that kind of debate about should there be almost an organisation that just sort of set down guidelines and standards.
What sort of regulation, though?
Well, things like legal issues, libel law and things like that.
But they're sort of governed by that anyway, aren't they?
Well, no, blogs aren't, because they're not. Because journalists have a certain standard of what to do and what not to do, whereas anybody can start a blog and just start writing about it.
But you're governed by the same laws, libel law, and
but there's
the laws
there's things that journalists do, obviously, which
code of practice.
Code of practice, yeah, that was the word.
Okay.
Yeah, because and obviously people who are ex-journalists feel that they know those things anyway. But one suggestion that was made at the end of this section was that there should be somewhere to go to seek help, and for things like this, advice on libel law and so on and so forth, which there isn't at the moment. option is kind of seen as best.
Session 3, the one that I went to without Dan, was about, basically it was an offshoot of an earlier argument that had started in a different session about how you can get people to participate in social action, politics. How can you get people interested in these things through an online setting, through a blog, through a chat room, whatever. And there were lots and lots of ex-civil servants who basically shouted at each other for an hour about how they would go about getting people involved in these things, and everyone would say, yes, but my idea is this. Oh, but my idea is exactly the same idea, just
slightly
phrased in a
better.
slightly different way. Yeah, but the general consensus was that you can get people involved, and you should use a range of media to get people interested in the world around them. Whether it's literacy came with the fact that some people actually can't read and write, so they wouldn't be able to do a blog, they wouldn't be able to involve in chat rooms. But why not do video? Why not do, you let them use their phones to kind of get involved in issues, have their say about how they'd like the country to be run, their town to be run. So there was basically that was pretty much, when I boiled it down to it. I took all these notes again, they're on my blog, but when it boiled down to it, it was just lots of people trying to come up with different ways of getting the general public involved in social issues without many resolutions. So that's what that section was about. Lots of venting.
I mean, the regulation issues I thought was a really interesting one, because it kind of mirrors the development of the press itself, in that you've got this desire to be taken seriously by people with access to information and people that you're reliant on as your sources, and there's this desire to be respectable, if you like, or trustable, or whatever, and regulation is this way to do that. I just find it really interesting. And I mean, I'm not sure whether a blog could actually say, anyway, we adhere to the Press Complaints Commission Code of Conduct, or the NUJ Code of Conduct, or something like that, whether the PCC has to say.
You also have to have that stamp on the
Yeah,
someone else.
I've just got their email address, so I'll send them an email, but I'd recommend you investigate that yourself as well, with respect to your...
Well, I would have thought the NUJ might want to start representing bloggers.
They already do.
They do?
The first, a guy called Conrad Quincy Harter, who's on Twitter as Connie,